Hi, would you like to tap into the creative power of now? Would you like to be able to create more what you want in life? Well, I'd like to share a personal story today, a true story, that what might help you to open up that ability to tap into the most creative parts of your life, the most creative moments of your life, those times when you were in the flow, where you were allowing yourself to receive and attract and create the things that you wanted to create in life. And actually those moments are very easy to tap into and to use the power of now in those moments to fuel, to fund your new dreams, the next moment of your life. In fact, it's a great myth, that one of the biggest myths, that it's difficult, that it's hard to tap into that power within us to create what we want. It's actually very easy to do. The only reason it's difficult or challenging is because our society, our culture, God bless it, that our culture has taught us that it's difficult, that it's hard. In fact, in many aspects of our civilization, it teaches us that it's impossible to do this. So what I'd like to do is present one example from my life, a personal story, that my intention is that it will trigger similar experiences in your life and help inspire you to tap into those moments of your life where you performed or experienced miracles, magic, time stretching, barrier stretching, boundary stretching, and you going outside the box, outside your programming, outside the past, to create something new and different and fun and exciting. So this happened to me using the sense of smell. And one thing I've learned over my years is that shaman and masters use the five senses as well as the sixth sense, intuition, or any other senses you might want to come up with in our infinite being, but mainly the five senses and the sixth sense, intuition, to act as a bridge to the present moment, to the power of now. And using the five senses and intuition as that bridge, all you need to do is just start paying attention. Be really alert and notice. Just notice when something unusual happens. When you smell something unusual. When you see something unusual. Taste. Feel. And something that's out of the ordinary. Out of sequence, out of place. Something that's beyond mathematical probability, beyond what usually happens, beyond what is so-called natural, normal. And in fact, the soul uses these experiences that are out of the ordinary to bridge our awareness, to offer a portal, a crack in the world, so that we can enter the out of the ordinary, the extraordinary world of our true powers, our true abilities, outside the programming, outside our conditioning, outside of what we've been able to do in the past. So this story helps you to see how the sensing just a smell that's familiar, deja vu, can allow you to go through that crack in the world, your programmed world, outside the box, and enter into that creative, imaginative, unlimited world of possibility in the power of now. I was visiting Colorado with my friend Sulana Stone, and we were in the town of Ouray, Colorado, and we decided to take an excursion to Silverton. Silverton was over this huge mountain, 11,000 foot mountain. We'd have to drive up switchback roads back and forth and then down the other side of the mountain. And Silverton was an old historic silver mining town that had been kept the way it was back in the old days. So the old wooden buildings where the wood planks that you walk on, the old stores, the old hotel, the old train. And it was a really fun place to visit because they had maintained these all the way it was 100, 150 years ago when silver prospectors went there. So we arrived. It took us over an hour to drive up the switchbacks. We had to drive rather slowly because it was icy. There was already snow at 11,000 feet. Also, there were huge snow banks on both sides of the road. So for a while, we were winding on switchbacks through, 10-foot snow banks on both sides of the road because they had nowhere to put the snow but on the side of the road. So we finally went through the pass and had to switch back carefully on the slippery road, icy road, all the way back down the other side of the mountain to Silverton. And when we got there, I heard a train whistle. So I've always loved steam engines my whole life, and they had an old steam engine that they had maintained, and you could ride it down the mountain to Durango, Colorado. So we went down to the train station, which wasn't hard to find. It's a very small little town. And when we got there, the train had already left. So, and that was the only excursion that day. So as we were waiting to ask when we could take the train the next day, there was an older gentleman and lady in front of us. The lady was sitting down, and she was fanning herself as if she was hot, although it wasn't hot in the room. And I heard the gentleman talk to the train clerk, the ticket seller, asking him how they might get to the hotel, if there was a cab or some way that he could get to the hotel. And as I was hearing them talk, I looked out the window and I could see the hotel. It was only 3 blocks away. But the gentleman was explaining that the older lady had a heart condition, and that her heart wouldn't allow her to walk to the hotel. And at that point, I decided that we might as well offer them a ride. After all, it was just 3 blocks. And so Sulan and I offered them a ride in our car, and they got in the car. We drove that 3 blocks to this old historical hotel. And as they got out, the older lady went over to Sulana and gave her a very, very long, deep, intimate hug. Really a full body hug, like connecting all the chakras. And they stayed in it for quite a while. It was quite unusual. And then the lady said to Sulana, "You must know God." And then we said goodbye. And as I said goodbye to the gentleman, after he gotten out, he put his hands up in the air, and his eyes said to me, "Well, what about me?" And he opened his arms, and so I realized he was asking for a hug. So I gave him a hug, and he was this big lumberjack type of guy, quite large, quite tall, with a plaid jacket. And he gave me a long, full-bodied, chakra-to-chakra hug, just like the lady had given Sulana. And that was quite surprising, but it felt good, and it was very warm, and Sulana and I both felt very lighter after they left. It was very sweet. So they left, and we decided to drive back to Ouray. Of course, we had to go over the mountain, and as we started up the mountain to drive back, I said to Sulana, I said, those 2 people, the lady and the gentleman, I said, they feel very familiar. Yeah, there's just something about them. And I can't really tell what it is. They don't look familiar, but they smell familiar. And I don't usually notice smells, but I noticed there was a certain pleasant smell about them. It was almost like flowers, a fragrant smell, but also the smell of fresh air with perhaps roses or tulips or some fresh spring flower smell. And I said, I've smelled that before, somewhere. It's a very unusual smell. And then I started remembering. Through the smell, I was taken back in consciousness as I'm driving up the mountain. I went back to a time I was in a cabin in the Grand Teton Mountains. It was the morning after I was saved by an older gentleman and a woman, saved from a blizzard in the Grand Teton Mountains. I had gotten caught in a snow blizzard. My car was covered with snow. I wandered away from the car out to find some civilization, although I was very high up in the mountains. There was no one around. And eventually I prayed and I saw a light in the woods, and it turned out to be a cabin. And when I entered the cabin, there was the same man and the same woman. And they were what you might call angels, or you could have said ascended masters. They were definitely angels sent by the ascended masters. And in Colorado, in Grand Tetons that night, 30 years earlier, they had nursed me back to warmth with a big fire, fed me a wonderful dinner, and we spent 4 or 5 hours with a spiritual initiation, spiritual instruction. They told me where I had come from, where I was going, what was going to happen to me in Seattle and Hawaii. And it's this story is in my first book, Inner Coach, Outer Power. And so this wonderful couple, I was sitting there reliving, re-experiencing the power and magic and warmth and love of that moment with this couple. And I said to Sulana, that's who they are. They've come back into my life. And Sulana and I had come to Colorado on a spiritual quest to get clarity in our life for our next move. And we had come to have an experience of God, of truth, of oneness. So when I finished telling Sulana that I knew who these people were and how wonderful it was to be with them again, because I felt like I was with them in no time space, in an eternal space of spirit. And when I finished telling Sulana, I looked out the car, and here we were driving down the mountain on the outskirts of Ouray. So somehow we had gone that hour drive through a mountain pass, through all the switchbacks with the snow drifts on both sides and the slippery, icy road, and neither of us had noticed any of it. And we checked our watch, and only about 5 or 6 minutes had gone by since we left Silverton. So that got our attention. We realized that connecting with that time, that timeless time, moment, with these angels or ascended masters, and the power and magic of that time had somehow whisked us through the physical universe here, and we had arrived at our destination. So that evening, we were very excited to tell the friend we were staying with this story, and at dinner, Sulana told the story I've just told you, and then she got to when the woman hugged her, gave her that full body hug. And when Sulana said the words again, quoting the woman, "You must know God," it came out differently. We heard it differently. This time we heard that the lady was telling Sulana, "You must know God. I can tell that you know God." It was more of an acknowledgement that by how Sulana felt in her presence, this woman could tell that Sulana already knew God, and was simply wanting to underline it, emphasize it, and bring that to Sulana's attention. That obviously the way you are, the beingness you have, the way you feel, you must know God because of the way you feel. And Sulana heard it that way, I heard it that way, and we realized that either we had shifted in our awareness that we were with God, or the woman had said it originally that way, but we weren't quite ready to hear it that way until after we spent some time with them in the now and the eternal present. Nonetheless, we got the message, both Sulana and I, to move into finding God, knowing God, realize that we do know God. We are God. So we had that wonderful God-knowing experience. And I might suggest right now that you could also decide to move from being a seeker of God or oneness to a finder, to acknowledge that you do know God. You must know God because of the way you are, because of who you are, because you are God. So you must know God because you are God. And we might just conclude. I'll ask you a few questions that might help you make this experience more real, more tangible for you. So if you knew in your knowing, in your heart, and notice the woman in the train station said she had a heart condition and that we needed to help her because she had a heart condition. And we feel that was one of the first clues. The saying, you know, that would you like to make an offer? Would you like to assist us in an affair of the heart? So that was our first clue to our souls, that this was about heart, soul, rather than just an ordinary ride from a train station. So if you would, in your heart, asking your knowing, if you knew a time right now, just opening up, if you knew a time when you did know God, if you knew a time when you recognized that you were God or knew God or were feeling God, what would it feel like right now? If you knew how to tap into the experience of knowing you are God, of knowing God, what would it smell like? What would it taste like? What would it sound like? Was there a sound, smell, or taste involved with that moment, or one of those moments where you felt oneness, completion, freedom, timelessness, the power of now? And this is an open-ended question. It's an open-ended prayer or request. So if you would like, just have fun today and the next 3 or 4 days, just looking for signs, synchronicities, messages from people, animals, plants, television, movies, whatever. Just opening to all the ways that you receive guidance and gifts from God. Just let go and allow yourself to open to letting the senses and your intuition as well as the 5 senses bring you back, bridge you into that world of eternal presence, eternal knowing, eternal peace, freedom. Thank you.